Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Hemophilia Federation of America's webinar, Building Coalitions at Home. Presenting today will be Wendy Owens, the Principal Investigator for the Choice Project at the Hemophilia Federation of America. Wendy?
Thank you very much, Katie. I appreciate it. I'm going to be talking today about building coalitions, and that's coalitions of organizations to focus on a specific legislative issue or even issue overall. I'll be speaking from the perspective that at one point in time I did form and run a coalition. But first, a little bit about Hemophilia Federation of America. We're a nonprofit federation with over 42 member organizations around the U.S. We represent the interests of the bleeding disorders community. We have a very strong advocacy program, and we're innovative in that, in the issues that we address. We have innovative programs as well, which are listed below, which are for families and men and women, for activities and so forth. So please take a look at our website at www.hemophiliafed.org. So when I ran a coalition, we formed the coalition, New England Coalition for Affordable Prescription Drugs, and these are the members that we had during the coalition's lifetime. I was the executive director. Did the formation. I was working at that time in New England at the New England Hemophilia Association and felt that the specialty tiers issue, which had become forefront in our state, our 5 New England states, actually 6 New England states, excuse me, was something that we needed more help with since the hemophilia population was very small, relatively, and with the specialty tier issue being about biologic drugs being put on specialty tiers and the potential for them to cost up to 33 to 50% out of pocket for patients. This was very serious, and it was very much a forefront of what we were interested in terms of advocacy in New England, which was keeping the cost of drugs down. So we formed this coalition, and as we go through these slides, I'll talk a little about the formation and how the coalition interacted as we learn more in general about coalition forming and interacting as a coalition. So we're going to cover really the bigger context, some definitions, benefits and drawbacks, as they are both, characteristics of a successful coalition, and stages of the coalition building, kind of a little stepwise process. We'll have some additional tips and ways that we can learn from each other. So the question we had to ask with the New England Coalition for Affordable Prescription Drugs was, why were we here? What was the importance of it? And it's just the goal that we all have as advocates, which is to protect our public policies for our bleeding disorder community, and that is our focus. That was my focus and my drive, but I felt that I could better do it in the context of a coalition. So I was thinking, how do I reach the goal of protecting the bleeding disorders community in the 6 states in New England? And that was looking outside of what I was doing, besides just our targeted action campaigns, our grassroots community organizations that we did to go to different state houses and so forth. And so we had to relate all of what our efforts were to the point where it seems like we should form a coalition that had a single goal in mind. So just as in a definition, we did that. We did a coming together. So it really was a fellowship and a coming together of different organizations with the same goal in mind, which was protecting our patients from these now very high-cost opportunities and cost-sharing opportunities that the insurers wanted to put in place. So we had this goal of passing legislation which would preclude the development of specialty tiers or limit the out-of-pocket costs associated with specialty tiers, and we had legislation in 5 different states. We were more than a network. The network is a group that similarly involved, who work together and grow, but unlike a coalition, the networks don't have this sort of mutual accountability, and we also, a network doesn't pool resources. So there's a lack of formal structure, and there was no central hub which our coalition had. So this was the whole point of it, was the whole is greater than the parts. And in this case in New England, by bringing these 11 different groups together and under one umbrella coalition, we really were able to strengthen relationships among each other and certainly increase our capacity. So as a one-person shop in New England for advocating and doing legislative issues in 6 different states, I just didn't have the time to give this issue as much time as it deserved, but we were able to pool our resources with some of the very large organizations like MS and US Pain, etc. And we had a greater voice, greater visibility, and more interaction certainly with policymakers. And we were able to respond right away if changes were made to a bill or if a vote happened. There was a lot of energy spent, and when some of us gave more energy than others at times, but we tend to balance it out. We had a good coalition. So there was resources that were required. We did have to raise funds in order to support the coalition and its efforts. Yes, definitely slower decision making, but nonetheless decisions usually, since we were on the same page in terms of our goals, were fairly easily made. And there was a little conflict every once in a while depending on whose agenda was really being promoted that day. So nonetheless, we were successful. We did have 5 pieces of special tier legislation in 5 different states, and in that one session in the spring, we did end up having 3 of those passed. And though they didn't start up with using exactly the language that we had started off with, they certainly did the job. Either precluding the use of specialty tiers or putting a cap on the out-of-pocket maximum that specialty tier drugs could cost a family or an individual in a year. And we aligned these directly with the ACA as well. So we had the right size. We had about 11 organizations, which was probably just about the right size. I would say more than 15 is too much. We did have people and organizations that were not only national but also regional and local. And that helped because everyone brought different contacts, connections, and resources to the game. We had a leadership. I was the leader, so that was nice to have a single pivot point, and we were always communicating. So emails were going out. We had our own Facebook page. We worked with lobbyists. Everyone had pretty realistic expectations overall, and we were just constantly moving towards action as a function of we had, the sessions times were pretty short for each state. So when you're considering forming your own coalition or being part of a coalition, you really need to know exactly, and exactly is the right word, what you want your coalition to do. Going back to our ultimate goal, which is supporting our community through our advocacy efforts. And the question, of course, for me was, do I really need a coalition, or can it be a network, a little bit looser group? But since we had a very specific issue, we had the advantage of numbers behind this issue. It was very helpful in this way. And when you're looking at the issue of forming a coalition, you also should look at, do other coalitions such like the one you want to form around the issue you want to form it, do they exist? And at the time, specialty tiers was still a pretty new issue. New York had passed a wonderful piece of legislation, but they were certainly at the forefront of the whole issue. So we did build. I put together basically a letter that each one of our members signed and said that they were committing specifically to the principles of the coalition and to a specific issue. We did map out and figure out where our assessments were, who had access to what kind of people, and maybe a couple of the organizations did have in-state lobbyists that they could afford, unlike New England Hemophilia. We worked with our partners. We did have just shared decision-making. And the capacity and the smart and creative recruitment of who is the best work groups to work with. And we did think outside the box for potential partners. And you'd be surprised at potential partners that come up. When you're focused in the area of hemophilia, sometimes we don't look outside as to who also is enduring the same hardships that our community might be enduring. But they're out there, so just have a look. It was act, that shark metaphor, just keep moving, keep moving. We were constantly moving. We had articles in newspapers. I wrote op-eds. We had a family interviewed by NPR in Maine. We had another family interviewed for another newspaper in Vermont. It was always on the move. We were always on the move and pushing something out, meeting with legislators, meeting with their aides, talking with insurance commissioners. So we were always moving, and that's very important for a coalition. So the issue doesn't grow stale with anyone. Always up to date, keeping everyone up to date, always had notes. And very important here, don't push consensus when it's not there. We could agree to some very general terms at times, and then if we got too specific, it may get too specific within a disease area, and we just decide not to go there. We did have agreed on outcomes, and these were measurable, and it was, the 5 pieces of legislation that we were promoting, did they get passed? And 3 out of 5 did, so we had a nice count. Everyone owned it. That was good because we had participation from everyone as best that they could. And there, again, were the larger national organizations who were involved, and they brought more resources where the smaller organizations didn't. But we found a balance, and everyone was accepting of that. There are going to be problems, there are going to be flaws, you're going to have members that are a little bit more committed than others and maybe a little bit overcommitted, but that is what happens. And avoiding the fizzle. It's very important, and this is something that we learn at the end of our process, is that we decided at the end, we've served our purpose. This coalition had a lifespan. We didn't really see it was going to have a lifespan, but it ended up, as we got to the end and we were able to pass the legislation, that we said, yep, we've run our course, this is great, it's time to shut this down and everybody move on to their respective other issues. So it was great while it lasted, and it worked. A few other tips: never waste a crisis. We had a crisis in Maine where there was a big vote that was coming up and it was going to be against us, and we worked very hard to get patients to call their members and to say, hey, if this happens and the vote's against this bill, there should be a problem. We had regular meeting dates. We always had agendas. We really did have open meetings. That was one thing that I emphasized. And our name, which was very funny, had a meaning, and it was just kind of dumb luck. But New England Coalition for Affordable Prescription Drugs is kneecapped. And we used to joke when we would go in and meet with insurers or talk with legislators or others, we would say, kneecapped, yeah, like the mafia. So we really want to get things done, or you better watch it. And so it was kind of funny, it was kind of cute, and people remembered us as a result of that. We did use a lot of media. We did have a website. We did conference calls. I worked directly with our members. There were some changes in who was in charge of representing organizations from the coalition, and we updated those folks regularly. And we did have calls, emails, and meetings with legislative and members and staff very regularly. So we established some very good, positive relationships because I think we had a really good issue as well. Now, the bottom line in terms of the key to our success was patient advocates. They were the ones that made the difference because they came out, they told their stories, they brought tears to legislators' eyes, literally. They were the ones that made the difference. To show pictures of their children, or to bring their child with them, or to bring the list of the costs of their factor medication, or to talk about the lymphoma medication that they have to take, and if they didn't take it that they would die, or that their child would become crippled if they didn't have the factor. They were willing to step up. They were willing to be interviewed by the newspaper and by the radio and even by TV. They were willing to put themselves out there, and they were the key to our success. So you have to have these patient advocates, and they have to be comfortable and confident that the message that you would like them to put across goes well with the issue and will best serve their needs. So we're here if you need us, HFA. I do have some coalition formation documents that I put together that people are welcome to have a look at. They are the kneecap branded ones, but they're something that you could utilize. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And this is our contact information. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wendy. There are a lot of coalitions that are happening right now, especially around specialty tier formation. So if anyone is interested in participating, reaching out to some other disease groups that have local offices, such as the Arthritis Foundation, Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, Lupus Organization. They have been really keyed into a lot of state activities, and those are great places to start. Those are a lot of groups that have similar issues that bleeding disorders have, and have been great partners on the national level, as well as in some instances on the state level. Well, thank you very much for your presentation, Wendy, and we'd also like to thank Baxter. These webinars are made possible by an unrestricted grant from them, and thank you.